Most people think IKEA is just cheap furniture. They are wrong. IKEA is one of the most carefully engineered psychological machines in the history of business. Every centimeter of the store, every Allen wrench, every Swedish meatball is the result of decades of precise calculation. It started with one accident in 1956. A man tried to load a small three-legged table into the trunk of his car. The table did not fit. He took a saw, removed the legs, and packed everything flat. That moment created a $50 billion empire. In the 1940s, buying a piece of furniture in Sweden or anywhere in Europe was an event. You went to a showroom, you looked at finished pieces displayed in Tableau, you picked one, you paid a deposit. Well, the store ordered it from a small workshop. 6 to 12 weeks later, a delivery van arrived at your house with two men in uniforms who carried it inside. The price reflected all of this. Furniture was the second largest single purchase a household made. After a car, a bookcase cost a month of wages, a dining set cost 3 months. The industry assumed every household furnished once or twice in a lifetime, and they priced the experience accordingly. Then, in the rural province of Småland, at Småland, in southern Sweden, a 17-year-old farm boy registered a small business by mail order. He had been selling matches and pencils door to door since the age of 5. He had a milk van for distribution and an instinct for arithmetic. His name was Ingvar Kamprad. Ingvar Kamprad. The business he registered was an acronym he had assembled from his own initials and the geography of his childhood. I, Ingvar. K, Kamprad. A, Elamtarid, the family farm. A, Agunarid, A-H Gun Atrud, the village. A-K-E-A. In 1943, IKEA sold pens, wallets, picture frames, watches, and nylon stockings, distributed locally through the Småland milk van. The first piece of furniture appeared in the IKEA catalog in 1948. 3 years later, Kamprad printed the first dedicated furniture catalog, 285,000 copies distributed by mail. The catalog became, for the next 70 years, IKEA's primary marketing instrument. In 1953, a 23-year-old former advertising agency artist named Gillis Lundgren, Gillis Lundgren, joined IKEA as the company's fourth employee. His title was catalog manager. Over the next 60 years, he would design more than 400 IKEA products. One of them would be the Billy bookcase, of which over 140 million units have been built. By some IKEA reporting, a new Billy is sold somewhere on Earth every 5 seconds. On October 28th of 1958, IKEA opened its first physical store. Elmhult, Hult, Småland, 6,500 square meters, a modernist concrete building with V-shaped pillars by the local architect Claes Knutsen. Customers walked through the showroom, picked what they wanted, and took the flat pack box home in their own car the same day. By 1965, the modern IKEA store format was set in Stockholm, the one-way labyrinth that walks the customer past every category. The childcare area called Småland, so parents shop longer, the cafeteria with meatballs to keep families on site, the marketplace at the path's end where impulse purchases happen, the flat pack warehouse as the final stop, where the customer becomes their own delivery service. In 1973, IKEA opened its first store outside Scandinavia in Switzerland, then Munich, then Vienna, then Paris, then the United States in 1985 outside Philadelphia. By 2008, IKEA was the largest furniture retailer in the world by revenue. In 1976, Kamprad published a short internal manifesto called A Furniture Dealer's Testament. Its central thesis became the doctrinal core of the company. A better everyday life for the many people. The discipline behind it was simpler still. Make price itself a design constraint. That same year, Kamprad himself moved from Sweden to Eppelinge I Palans, near Lausanne, Switzerland, partly to escape Sweden's high wealth tax. By 1982, he had registered a Dutch foundation in the city of Leiden, called Stichting Inca Foundation, named after his own initials. 2 years after that, in 1984, he gifted 100% of his IKEA equity to the foundation as an irrevocable transfer. By Bloomberg's 2015 calculation, his personal paper wealth had reached $58 billion. By 2014, the IKEA catalog reached 200 million copies in a single year. in 69 versions, in 32 languages, in more than 50 markets. Likely the largest annual print run of any commercial publication on Earth. Kamprad was by then in his late 80s. He drove a 1993 Volvo 240. He flew economy class. That he took the salt and pepper packets home from restaurants. There was no single dramatic crisis in the rise of IKEA. The turning point was an accident in a parking lot in 1956. Gillis Lundgren was 27 years old. He was loading a small three-legged occasional table designed by a colleague named the Lövet, L-U-H-Vet, into the trunk of his Volvo 445 Duett to drive it to a photo studio for a catalog shoot. The table was assembled. The trunk was a standard Volvo 445 station wagon trunk. The table did not fit. He grabbed a handsaw from the trunk. He removed the three legs. He laid the legs flat beside the tabletop in cardboard. He drove off. At the photo shoot, the implication arrived in his head. If a finished table travels disassembled, then it can ship disassembled. If it ships disassembled, the truck carries 5 times more units. If the truck carries more units, the warehouse stores more units. If the warehouse stores more units, the price falls. If the price falls, the customer who would have paid 3 months of wages for a dining set can now buy one for a week. And there's one more domino. If the customer assembles the furniture themselves, the customer becomes part of the labor force without being paid for it. The customer also feels something unexpected when they finish, a kind of pride that no factory-assembled piece can deliver. Guinness World Records officially recognizes 1956 as the year flat pack furniture was invented. They credit Gillis Lundgren and the small Swedish town of Älmhult. What no one understood at the moment was that the same instinct, convert a logistical constraint into a business architecture, was the instinct Kamprad had been applying his entire life, to pricing, to distribution, to the store layout, and eventually to inheritance tax, to corporate structure, and to the question of what to do about a politically inconvenient correspondence with a Swedish fascist that had begun in 1942 and would not end. In November of 1994, the Stockholm daily newspaper Expressen published documents from the personal archives of a Swedish far-right politician named Per Engdahl. Engdahl had died 6 months earlier. His papers had become accessible to journalists. The documents revealed that Ingvar Kamprad, beginning in 1942 at the age of 16, had joined Engdahl's organization, the New Swedish Movement, and remained in active correspondence and personal contact with Engdahl through 1950 and beyond. The New Swedish Movement in 1942 had publicly advocated for Sweden to enter the Second World War on the side of the Axis. In the post-war decades, Engdahl ran it as a fascist political vehicle, publishing a paper titled The Way Forward. Within days of the Expressen publication, Kamprad sent a letter to every IKEA employee worldwide. He called his association with Engdahl and the New Swedish Movement the greatest mistake of my life, but the letter was praised at the time as a model of corporate accountability. IKEA's brand and revenue continued to grow steeply through the 1990s and 2000s. But 17 years later, in 2011, a Swedish journalist named Elisabeth Osbrink, Elisabeth Brink, published a book that reopened the question. Osbrink had spent years in the Swedish National Archives. She had found a letter Kamprad sent to Engdahl on January 12th of 1951. The letter began with the salutation BB, meaning, in Swedish, best brother. Kamprad thanked Engdahl for their last meeting. Other archival documents showed that Kamprad had financially supported Engdahl's movement through the 1950s, and in 2010, 16 years after the Greatest Mistake letter, Kamprad, then 84 years old, told Osbrink in an on-the-record interview, Per Engdahl is a great man, and I will maintain that as long as I live. There was by this point a parallel set of revelations about IKEA's tax structure. Stichting Inca Foundation, registered in Leiden in 1982, owned the company that operated nearly all of IKEA's branded stores. Inter IKEA Systems in the Netherlands owned the IKEA brand and collected a 3% royalty on the profit of every IKEA store on Earth. Interogo Foundation, in Liechtenstein, received those royalties through a chain that ran from Luxembourg. Between 2012 and 2014, Interogo's effective tax rate on those royalties was 0.06%. In February of 2016, the European Greens in the European Parliament published a report estimating that this structure had saved IKEA approximately 1 billion euros in tax between 2009 and 2014. What the Greens EFA report named by a different language was the same instinct that had built IKEA from the start. Take a constraint, high inheritance tax in Sweden, royalty payments out of operating jurisdictions, a politically inconvenient teenage affiliation, and engineer it into structure. Quick pause. This episode is sponsored by a private community I run. Inside, I break down more than 100,000 deep dive courses on business, design, and leadership, including frameworks for spotting structural choices founders make that outlast them by decades. If this story made you wonder how a 1956 parking lot accident became a corporate ownership structure that still works in 2026, the strategy and corporate finance tracks inside answer that. The link is in the description below. Now, back to IKEA, January 2018. And what did IKEA do in response to the Engdahl revelations and the tax investigations? Reputationally, the 1994 letter held. Bertil Torakol's authorized 1998 biography, Leading by Design, framed Kamprad's choices in the most sympathetic available light. The 2011 Osbrink revelations triggered no boycott. IKEA opened its own museum in 2016 in the original 1958 Elmholt store building, and the museum included, in a curated section, the documented facts of Kamprad's youth. Structurally, in June of 2013, Kamprad, then 87 years old, retired from his last formal corporate role, the board of Inter IKEA Holding. His youngest son, Matthias, replaced him as chairman. The same year, the Interogo Foundation in Liechtenstein revised its rules to require that members of the Kamprad family did not constitute a majority of the council. Substantively, the family's influence remained. Legally, the family was no longer the formal controlling principal. In 2016, Inter IKEA Holding moved its headquarters from Luxembourg to the Netherlands, partly in response to the European Union's broader scrutiny of Luxembourg tax rulings after the LuxLeaks investigation. None of these changes required IKEA to change the underlying business model. The flat pack still ships. The one-way labyrinth still walks the customer past every category. The IKEA effect still produces the 63% emotional premium. The Stichting Inca Foundation still owns the operating company. The royalty still runs through the Netherlands. The catalog ended in 22, Saito Inobiari, but only because a digital catalog reaches 100 times more people, faster, for nothing. What was built into the foundation in 1943, in 1956, in 1958, in 1976, in 1982, in 1984, still operates today. On January 27th of 2018, Ingvar Kamprad died at his home in Småland. He was 91 years old. He died in his sleep of pneumonia after a short illness. And the funeral was private because he had transferred 100% of his IKEA equity to Stichting Inca Foundation in 1984. His death triggered no inheritance event, no shareholder reorganization, no operational disruption. The architecture had been engineered 34 years earlier, precisely so that this moment would be silent. Today, IKEA operates in a parallel two-headed structure. Inter IKEA Group, the franchisor that owns the IKEA brand, generated 26.5 billion euros in revenue in fiscal year 2024. Inca Group, ING Ka, the largest franchisee, generated 41.5 billion euros in the same year. Together, that is more than 68 billion euros, somewhere between 70 and 75 billion US dollars, depending on the day's exchange rate. By April of 2025, there were 504 IKEA branded stores in 63 markets. Roughly 160,000 coworkers were employed inside the Inca franchise alone, with the total IKEA workforce, including franchisees, exceeding 225,000. In December of 2020, IKEA announced that it was discontinuing the printed catalog after 70 years. The corporate phrase used was emotional but rational. The 2021 edition, released in autumn 2020, was the last. At its 2016 peak, the catalog had reached 200 million copies in a single year. Gillis Lundgren, The man who in 1956 had removed the legs from a small three-legged table beside a Volvo Duett had died on February 25th of 2016, 2 years before his founder. He was 86. He had designed more than 400 IKEA products. He had continued working as a consultant well into his 80s. The Engdahl thread does not have a tidy ending. The IKEA Museum acknowledges Kamprad's youth in a curated wall. Mainstream coverage of his death noted both his folk hero status and the unresolved 2010 Osbrink quote, "The European Commission's investigations into IKEA's tax architecture have not produced criminal findings, and the Stichting Inca structure remains in place." The Kamprad family operates within it, no longer as a controlling majority, but with continuity of practical influence. There are 3 lessons in the IKEA story. None of them is the one most retellings choose. The first is that the most defensible business models do not come from laboratories. They come from mundane physical constraints. A table did not fit in the trunk of a Volvo 445 Duett. A man removed the legs. The man was not a product strategist. He was a catalog manager who did not want to be late for a photo shoot. The accident solved the wrong problem first. Then it kept solving problems no one had thought to ask. The second is the IKEA effect. In 2012, 3 economists, Michael Norton at Harvard, Daniel Mochon at Tulane, and Dan Ariely, Aireu Lee at Duke, published a paper in the Journal of Consumer Psychology titled The IKEA Effect: When Labor Leads to Love. In 4 experiments using IKEA boxes, origami, and Lego, they found that people will pay 63% more for the version of a product they assembled themselves than for an identical version pre-assembled by someone else. The customer's free labor does not feel like exploitation. It feels like ownership. Wayfair, Amazon Basics, Costco, Walmart's home division, every modern flat pack retailer is operating downstream of the same psychology IKEA accidentally found in a 1956 parking lot. The third is that what gets built into the foundation outlives the founder. Kamprad gave 100% of IKEA to a Dutch foundation in 1984. 34 years later, he died, and IKEA did not notice. The same engineering instinct that turned a logistics constraint into a business model turned an inheritance tax constraint into a perpetual ownership structure. Whether one approves of the structure or not, it works exactly as it was designed to. The same is true of Kamprad's correspondence with Per Engdahl, of the royalty pipeline through the Netherlands and Liechtenstein, of every store layout and every catalog page and every meatball. The brand promise of this channel says every empire dies the way it was built. The IKEA story complicates that in a useful way. IKEA has not died. IKEA may not die for a very long time. What stays is what was built into the foundation. The flat pack will be there. The store labyrinth will be there. The IKEA effect will be there. The foundation in Leiden and the royalty in Liechtenstein will be there. And the unresolved 2010 quote about Per Engdahl will be there too. In 1956, in a parking lot in Elmholt, a small 3-legged table did not fit in the trunk of a Volvo 435 Duett. A man removed the legs. 7 years later, a new Billy bookcase is sold somewhere on Earth every 5 seconds. The flat pack architecture is the operating model of every flat pack retailer alive. The man who removed the legs has been dead for 10 years. The founder who sold the man's idea has been dead for 8. The foundation that owns the company has been operating since 1982 and will continue by its charter for as long as IKEA exists. If you want more stories like this, subscribe. There are a lot of empires still to get through. Every empire dies the way it was built. IKEA was not built to die.